Hello, everyone. I am Shannon Ballman Theis, the Payroll Queen, and today we are going to be discussing the Georgia G-4, which is their W-4 equivalent. All right, there we go. Um, and for this video, I'm trying a little bit of a different look to it. I've got the withholding certificate on one side and the instructions that go along with it on the other side. It's actually the same document. I've got page one on one side of the screen and page two on the other side of the screen. So let me know if you like this format better than going through and discussing the withholding certificate and then detailing out the instructions. We're going to test it out. And as we go through the withholding certificate, we're going to be also showing the instructions. So let's get started. With the G-4, it asks for the same standard information that all the other W-4 forms and W-4 form equivalents ask for, which is your full name, address, social security number, and in line 3, you're going to pick if you are single, married, filing separate, married, filing joint, both spouses working, or married, filing joint with one spouse working, or had a household. So it looks like that is going to get written on line 7. Oh, yeah. Okay. So 3, you enter the letter that you choose below on line 7, and it's kind of hidden. It's way down here under the pop-up box. And on line 4, you're going to enter the number of dependents, allowances you are entitled to claim. The term dependent shall have the same meaning as in the Internal Revenue Code 1986, provided, however, that any unborn child with a detectable human heartbeat, such terms are defined in Code Section 1-2-1, shall qualify as a dependent minor. Down here you've got your federal estimated itemized deductions, if itemizing deductions. So you'll check. Why does this say check a box? Oh, that's line 8. I don't, you know what? Normally they have examples of like there's more instructions on how to fill out the worksheet, but it doesn't look like this one has the more instructions on filling out the worksheet. All right, so for this worksheet, line A wants the federal estimated itemized deductions. If itemizing deductions, I would think that if you don't itemize, most people are going to take the standard deduction, especially with the updated standard deductions. You would enter 0 in A, I believe, if you don't itemize. B is the Georgia standard deduction. You'll enter 1. So if you're single or head of household, you put 12,000 in this section. If you're married filing joint, you'll put 24,000 in the section. If you're married filing separate, you'll put 12,000 in this section. And then you're going to subtract line B from line A, and you'll put that number here where I accidentally had my cursor before. If it's 0 or less than 0, so if it's a negative number, you'll put 0 here, or you'll put whatever number is here. And then for line D is going to be the allowable Georgia adjustments to federal adjusted gross income. And that's where I was looking for more instructions, but I am not seeing that there's more instructions for the worksheet. I could be wrong. And E is you're going to add amounts on line C and D. F is the estimated taxable income not subject to withholding. G is more math. You're going to subtract line F from line E. If 0 or less, you're going to stop. If you have a number in G, you'll continue on to H and you'll divide the amount on line G by $4,000 and you'll enter that total on line 5. So you have to do the worksheet in order to get the number for line 5. And this is the number of Georgia adjustment allowances you can claim if the remainder is over 1,500, round up. So it sounds like 1,500 is the amount that you can put on. But let's just keep reading these other instructions and see what they have over here. Line 6, you're going to enter a specific dollar amount that you authorize your employer to withhold in addition to the tax withholding based on your marital status and dependents and number of allowances. So if you need a total of $600 and you get paid twice a month, the additional withholding amount that you'll enter is going to be $50 because that is the amount that you'll have withheld on each of your payrolls. All right. So line 8, you're going to check the first box if you qualify to claim exempt from withholding. You can only claim exempt if you filed a Georgia income tax return last year and the amount on line 4 of the Form 500 EZ or line 16 of Form 500 was 0, and you expect to file a Georgia tax return this year and not have any tax liability. You cannot claim exempt if you did not file a Georgia income tax return for the previous tax year. Receiving a refund in the previous tax year does not qualify you to claim exempt. So a little bit of the reasoning behind getting a refund does not qualify you to claim exempt. If you had $5,000 withheld from your paychecks and you got a $500 refund, you were still subject to tax. Just because you get a refund doesn't mean that you are not subject to having tax on your income. So, example, your employer withheld $500 of Georgia income tax from your wages, line 4 of your Form 500 EZ, line 16 of Form 500 was $100. Your tax liability is the amount on line 4 or line 16. Therefore, you do not qualify to claim exempt. Your employer withheld $500 of Georgia income tax from your wages. The amount on line 4 of Form 500 EZ or line 16 of Form 500 was 0. Your tax liability is the amount on line 4 or line 16, and you filed a prior year income tax return. Therefore, you do qualify to claim exempt. So this is 2 different examples that they didn't do a very good job of distinguishing, that one was example 1 and one was example 2. And B, you check the second box if you are not subject to Georgia withholding and meet the conditions set forth under Service Member Civil Relief Act. Under the act, a spouse of a service member may be exempt from Georgia income tax on income from services performed in Georgia if the service member is present in Georgia in compliance with military orders, the spouse is in Georgia solely to be with the service member, the service member maintains domicile in another state, and the domicile of the spouse is the same as the domicile of the service member, or the spouse of the service member has elected to use the same residence for purposes of taxation as the service member. Additional information for employers regarding the Military Spouse Relief Act. is on the W-2, the employer should not report any of the wages as Georgia wages. Two, if the spouse of a service member is entitled to the protection of the Military Spouse Residency Relief Act in another state and files a withholding exemption form in such other state, the spouse is required to submit Georgia Form G-4 so that withholding will occur as is required by Georgia law when a Georgia domiciliary, I'm sure I pronounced that wrong, works in another state and withholding is not required by such other state. If the spouse does not fill out the form, the employer shall withhold Georgia income tax as if the spouse is single with zero allowances. So over here, if you're exempt or you don't have liability, or if you're exempt, you're going to check here. That was the first part A that we read over here. If you are a service member or the spouse of a service member and qualify as a service member under the Civil Relief Act, then you will click here and you have to put in the state, your residence, and the service member's state. Let's see. Now it's got some instructions, it looks like, for the worksheet for calculating the additional allowance. You're going to enter the information as requested for each line. For line D, enter items such as retirement income exclusions, U.S. obligations, and other allowable deductions under Georgia law. See IT 511 booklet for more information. And you do not complete lines 4 through 7 if you are claiming exempt. So if you are claiming exempt, your G4 is just going to have your full name, social security number, and address. And well, it wants you to do 3, but 3 goes on line 7. So, and you're not supposed to do line 7. So I I want to say that you just put your name on it. And then if you're claiming exempt, you click this box and then you sign it under penalty of perjury and date it. And that would be a complete one, but it, it's not super common that people are going to be able to legitimately claim exempt. It's actually very rare that I see a federal or state W-4 equivalent that legitimately is filled out claiming exempt. It's normally children who are working their first job, or it could be there's a lot of other reasons that people could legitimately be exempt, but when I see them, it's normally children. And OG or OCGA code section 48-7-102 requires that you complete and submit a G4 to your employer in order to have tax withheld from your wages. By correctly completing this form, you can adjust the amount of tax withheld to meet your tax liability. Failure to submit a properly completed Form G4 will result in your employer withholding as though you are single with zero allowances. Employers are required to mail any Form G4 claiming more than 14 allowances or exempt from withholding to the Georgia Department of Revenue. Employers should honor a properly completed form as submitted unless otherwise notified by the department. Such forms remain in effect until changed or until February 15th of the following year. Employers who know that a G4 is erroneous should not honor that form and should withhold as if the employee is single claiming zero allowances until a corrected form has been received. So this is really important. If you are a legitimately claiming exempt, then every year by February 15th, you need to submit a new G4 to your employer. Otherwise, if a new G4 isn't submitted, then they have to withhold as if you were single with zero allowances, which is the highest amount of withholding that you can have. So if you guys have any questions or I didn't cover something that you wanted to be covered, please leave a comment below and I will come back, and I frequently am checking all of my comments. So thank you for watching the Georgia G4. And again, I am Shannon Ballman Theis, the Payroll Queen. We'll see you next time.